Hey guys, today I'm here with the Barricade HD Rear Bumper and Tire Carrier fitting all 2018 and newer JL Wranglers. So if you're looking to upgrade to larger wheels and tires and you're looking for a heavy-duty rear bumper and tire carrier to accommodate that while also getting some functionality in the meantime, this option by Barricade is going to be a great choice to take a look at. So with this bumper, you're getting a couple of recovery points for those sticky situations on the trail, making sure that you're prepared. You're also getting a 2-inch hitch receiver, which will be able to do some small towing while also accommodating for any accessories that are mounted up to the hitch, and you're getting a heavy-duty construction to make sure that it's able to support the weight of up to a 35-inch tire and protect the rear end of your Wrangler. Now what I really like about this is the fact that this is first of all going to come with everything that you need to install it, down to the extended wiring harness for the backup camera, all of the mounts for all of those factory features, and even down to the license plate light bolts. This also will have the ability to mount up any additional lighting if you choose to do that in the future, helping you out with some visibility out of the rear end of your Wrangler. Now with all of that being said, this is going to be roughly $800 for the kit, and I personally think that that's a really good price for what this combo brings to the table. Now this is going to be a pretty average price point for a rear bumper and tire carrier, especially with this being a single action tire carrier. Other less expensive options are usually going to be a little bit more simplistic in how that they're designed. They may be for a dual action tire carrier, which essentially means that you have to open up the tire carrier first and then your tailgate to access your cargo area. With this, all you have to do is open up your tailgate and you have full access, making it very user-friendly and making it hassle-free. Now this is also going to come again with those light mounting options and everything that you need, which is a step up from those less expensive choices. Now when comparing this to some more expensive choices on the page, this is not going to have every bell and whistle. This is definitely a high quality system, but again, this is only able to mount up to a 35-inch tire. So if you are looking for something a little bit more heavy duty, you may have to spend a little bit more, but if you're looking for something that is only going to have to carry up to a 35-inch tire while also being very functional and high quality in the meantime, this is going to be a really good choice. Now install is going to be a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. I'd say you need about an hour to 2 hours to get the job done, and some pretty basic hand tools. So speaking of the install, let's jump into that now. The tools that I used for this install were a ball peen hammer and a dead blow, trim removal tools, a wire cutter, stripper and crimper, a pair of needle nose pliers, an open-ended wrench set ranging from 19 millimeters down to 10 millimeters, 3/8 inch drive and 1/4 inch drive ratchet, a punch, the provided Allen key, the ratchet and the T40 Torx from the JL toolkit, a Phillips head screwdriver, a socket set ranging from 35 millimeters down to 8 millimeters, T25 and T8 Torx bit, a impact wrench, a tape measure, and grease. So our first step is to take off our spare tire. We're going to go ahead and take off the cover for the backup camera first. I'm going to use the T40 Torx as well as the ratchet from the JL toolkit. So all we have to do is spin that and pull back, and then we can access our lug nuts and take off our tire. So if you have factory lug nuts, you'll be using a 22 millimeter socket. We do not, so I'm going to use our 6-spline lug key and a 21 millimeter socket. We can start by taking off our tire carrier. So what we need to do first is open up our tailgate. And we need to remove this trim piece to access our wiring harness for our third brake light and our backup camera. I'm using a trim removal tool. It may be a little bit easier to start from this side and pull back. Just held in by a number of clips. Put this to the side. We can disconnect these top 2 connectors. Just press down on the tab and pull back. So now that that's free, we can close up our tailgate and start the carrier removal. So to make sure that those wires are free, we want to peel this grommet back, wiggle this out, and then we can remove the bolts that are holding on our carrier with a 13 millimeter socket. Now just be mindful of that last bolt. The carrier will come with it. Make sure you have a grip on the carrier. Then we can pull back and remove it. Now we can start our bumper removal, starting with this trim piece on the outer side and the wheel well. There are 3 8mm bolts holding it on, so I'm going to use an 8mm socket and a 1/4" drive ratchet to remove those. Once those 3 bolts are out, we can fully remove the trim piece. Next, we can remove the 2 bolts that are holding on our secondary bracket to the bumper. I'm going to be using a 16mm socket. Next, we have another bracket up at the front holding on the back of our bumper. I'm going to be using the same 16mm socket to remove those 2 bolts. Now on the passenger side, you do want to be careful of the exhaust here, not to cut your hand on it. Once that bolt is out, we can repeat that same process on the other side. So once you've taken out the bolts on the driver's side, there is also going to be a wiring harness. This is going to be for your license plate light. I'm just taking a trim removal tool and disconnecting the little clip just so we can pull it away from the body and disconnect the harness. You can push down on this tab, pull back, and now we're ready to remove our bumper. After everything's disconnected from our bumper, what we can do is fully remove it. What we can do now is take off our brackets. Depending on the model, you will need a 21mm socket and or an 18mm socket for the front brackets, and then a 16mm socket for the back ones. So I'm going to be using a 21mm socket to take off the front brackets as well as the tow hook here. Now with the tow hook, there are 2 underneath. And the bracket and the tow hook will come off together. Next, we can remove this back bracket by removing the 2 16mm bolts. I'm going to be using a 16mm socket. And then we can repeat that on the other side. What we can do next is deconstruct our factory carrier. We do need to remove the third brake light as well as the backup camera. So we're going to take those out and swap those over to our new rear bumper and tire carrier. So I'm going to be using a T25 Torx bit to start removing the Torx bolts that are holding on the top piece of the carrier as well as the studs inside of the carrier. So I'll start up here. As you can tell, when I took out those 2 bolts, the studs started to drop down. I'm just going to take a dead blow and give it a little bit of a push out of the carrier. Next, we can start removing the T25 Torx bolts that are holding the rest of the carrier together. I'm going to use that same Torx socket to do that. Once those are all removed, we can start to separate this. There's going to be a wiring harness that we want to take out of this little groove here. Take this and put that to the side. And start to separate these 2 pieces. Put this top piece to the side. Start to pull up our harness, and there's going to be 2 more T25 Torx bolts that are holding on our third brake light. You can use that same Torx socket. I'm going to hold on to these screws because we will be reusing them, and then we can go ahead and disconnect this harness. Now we'll be using the harness as well, so we can put this piece to the side and start working on our backup camera. So there is a little clip that's holding the wiring harness on. We're going to take trim removal tool, just pull back on that clip and wiggle it out. These can tend to break, so if it does break on you, that is okay. Right, so once that's disconnected, we can take off our backup camera using a T8 Torx bit or T8 Torx socket. These are very tiny screws. And there's going to be 3 of them. After those are removed, we can pull the harness up because we have to disconnect it. You can press down on this, pull back. Once the camera is disconnected, we can put that to the side. We can wiggle the harness back through and put our studs to the side and save our harness. So before we hop into the install of our rear bumper, I did want to tell you guys a little bit more about it and the benefits that you're going to receive out of this new setup by Barricade over your factory setup. So right off the bat, you can tell that this is going to be roughly the same size. This is a little bit more compact than the factory setup, and it is a little bit shorter, which will help your departure angles while you're out on the trail in comparison to your factory setup that wraps around the sides. This Barricade setup is also going to be a lot more durable, made of a steel construction, and it's going to have a fine black textured powder coat finish on top, which is going to give it a very sleek look and protect that steel underneath from any rust or corrosion. Now, when we're looking at the factory bumper, this is just going to be made of plastic, so if you do take a hit to the rear end of your Wrangler, this is not going to give you all of that protection that this Barricade setup will. Not to mention, you're also getting some paneling around the sides, which will help out with styling and a more aggressive look, and you're getting a couple functional features with this on just the bumper as well. So you're getting a larger cutout in the middle for that larger wheel and tire that we'll be mounting up in just a second with our heavy-duty spare tire carrier. You're also getting 2 welded D-ring mounts on either side for some recovery while you're out on the trail, and they also incorporate a hook, which is a little bit different than some other options that we have available on the page. Now you're also getting a hitch receiver. This is a standard 2-inch hitch receiver that will mount up to the frame separate from the bumper, so this is going to be capable of some light towing and also accessories and even a recovery point. So let's go ahead and install that hitch receiver first, and then we can move on to our bumper. Now we can install our hitch. We're going to start with our back plate and our provided longer bolts. We're going to put this behind our frame and mount this up in the factory location. I like to hang this in place first before we go ahead and put our hitch into place. Now for right now, I'm just going to keep those 2 there so we can line up our hitch. And then we can secure that down and work on the other bolts. So on this side, we'll attach the flat washer, lock washer, and nut. Then we can do the same for the middle. After the 4 at the top are secure, what we can do is secure the 2 at the bottom. These are going to be our shorter bolts. Same thing goes for these, 2 flat washers, a lock washer, and then the nut. And we can do that on the other side. Now we can go ahead and tighten everything down once it's secured. For the top 4 bolts, I'm going to be using an 18mm deep socket and an 18mm wrench. Now for the bottom, I'm going to still use that 18mm wrench, but I'm also going to use a shallow 18mm socket. Same thing for the other side. So while I'm at the Jeep, I'm going to install the welded nut plate in the passenger side frame. We're going to line this up with the 2 holes at the bottom, and then we'll be ready to prep our bumper. Before we mount our bumper up to our Jeep, we do need to install our spindle first, so we can send this up through the bottom, making sure that this is going to line up with our mounting locations. Then we can take our shorter 18mm bolts, our flat washers and our lock washers, and thread those into the spindle. Now with an 18mm socket, we can tighten these down. We want to make sure that the spindle is as straight as possible. Next, we can install our plate over the spindle, making sure that the mounting locations line up. We can take our small button head bolts, our flat washers and lock washers for those, and thread those into the bumper. And we can take our provided Allen key, tighten those up. Now we're ready to mount up our bumper. Now with the help of a friend, we can lift the bumper into place. Make sure you have your hardware staged. It's going to be your 21mm bolts, your flat washers, and your lock washers. You're going to have 2 bolts on the side and 2 underneath. Once the bumper is adjusted where you need it to be, we can tighten the bolts that we just installed down with a 21mm socket. Same for the 2 on the side. So just like I did with the bumpers, I wanted to stop down and give you guys a little side-by-side comparison with our new Barricade spare tire carrier and our factory one. Tell you guys how this setup is going to benefit you a lot more than your factory setup. So this is going to be made of the same materials that the bumper is going to be made of, a 3/16 inch heavy duty steel material. And you're also still getting that fine texture black powder coat finish on top, which is going to protect the steel underneath, and it's also going to do a good job of giving you a sleek but aggressive look. Now this is going to be able to hold a lot more weight because of the heavy duty steel construction, but it's also going to be frame mounted instead of tailgate mounted, which will accommodate more weight than your factory system. The factory spare tire carrier is made of a hard plastic material and it's mounted up to the tailgate. This setup is going to be perfect for stock applications and the stock spare tire weight, but when you add an oversized tire, all of that extra weight can damage the tailgate hinges over time. They can make them sag and wear out, damaging your tailgate. So moving to a bumper mounted system like this is definitely going to be beneficial in that aspect. Speaking of the system as a whole, this is going to be a single action tire carrier. So some other options on the page are going to be for a dual action. That means essentially you open up the carrier and then you open up your tailgate to access your cargo area. area, but the spare tire carrier here is going to be attached to the tailgate, so all you have to do is open up your tailgate to access your cargo area, making it very hassle-free and one fluid motion. What I also do really like about this setup is that it's going to accommodate for all of your factory features, so you have a mount for your third brake light as well as your backup camera, and it comes with a mount for your license plate and even light bolts for that. So enough about these two on the table, let's go ahead and put our new system together. So before we can install our plate on our tailgate, what we need to do is take these vents off. I'm just going to use a trim removal tool, and we can pop them forward. So making sure that this is oriented the correct way, that our mount is over at the driver's side, we can mount up our plate using the factory hardware for the spare tire carrier. This is going to be the 8 13mm bolts. Just going to thread 2 in, let that hang out, and then we can thread in the rest of the bolts. Now once all of those are threaded, what we can do is center this and start to tighten them down. We can adjust this later if need be, but I'm using a 13mm socket.
Our next step is to prep our carrier to be installed on the spindle. So we are gonna get 2 races, 1 small and 1 large. Same is gonna go for the 2 roller bearings. We're gonna have 2 washers, and then we're also gonna have a seal for the bottom. So we're gonna start with our bottom. We're going to tap the race into place. So we wanna make sure that the tapered part is facing up. We can put it down into our carrier. And then you can either use a large socket for this, or you can use a punch and a hammer and go around the edge of the race. You want to make sure that you're very careful when you do this, but we want to tap it in evenly and make sure that it's flush and set. All right, so now that the bottom race is flush, what we can do is pack our large roller bearing, and then we're gonna place it down in the race here. What we can do next is pack our bearing. So I have some grease here, and you wanna make sure that this is going to be packed in the middle of the bearing. I just like to put some on my hand and then just press it in. Spin the bearing, make sure that the grease gets everywhere. And then once it's successfully packed, we can put that down into place. What we can do next is take our large washer, put that down on top of our bearing, then take our bottom seal. Just press it into place. Now this may not want to go by hand, so you can just take the hammer that we used earlier and hammer it into place. All right, once that seal is sitting flush, we can turn this over and install it on our spindle. What we can do now is take our tire carrier and place it down over the spindle. Now that our carrier is on the spindle, we can install our smaller race. It's gonna go up at the top. Now it does have a ways to go, so we're gonna do the same method that we did with the bottom and take our punch and just lightly tap around. What we can do now is pack our smaller bearing with grease. Same way that we did with our larger bearing. So once the bearing is packed, we can put it on the top of our spindle. So once the bearing is sitting flush and the smaller washer is in, what we can do is thread on our castle nut. This is going to keep our carrier in place. What we can do now is tighten down the castle nut with a 35mm socket. Next, we can install our cotter pin, making sure that it lines up with our castle nut. Take a pair of needle nose pliers and bend that back. Then we can install our set screw using our provided Allen key. Then once that's on, we can install our cap. Now that may give you a little bit of trouble just because it does need to seal to the carrier, so I'm just gonna hit it with a dead blow. All right, once the cap is set, what we can do is attach our mount. What we can do next is install the bracket for our bump stop. So we're gonna take our smaller button head bolt flat washer, another flat washer, and the nylon lock nut, and install those in the top and the bottom mounting location. Once those are both in place, we can take our provided Allen key and a 10mm ratcheting wrench. You could also use a socket, but it is kind of difficult to fit a deep socket here. We can go ahead and tighten that down. Then we can take our provided button head bolt, flat washer, and flange nut and install the bump stop on the bracket. Once that's mounted up, we can tighten that up with the same 10mm ratcheting wrench and the same Allen key, but you want to make sure that we're not over tightening this because it will pull through the bump stop since this is made of rubber. Now we can attach our third brake light bracket. Next, we can take the bottom part of our third brake light bracket, the threaded plate, and our provided button head bolt, and thread this into place. Once those are threaded into the threaded plate, we can tighten those down with the provided Allen key. Next, we can take our third brake light, put this down on top. The pegs on the bottom will line up with the bracket. We can flip it over and secure it down with the factory Torx bolts. I'm going to tighten those up with a T25 Torx. Now you don't want to over tighten these because this is made of plastic. But once they are snugged up, we can install this bracket on our bottom bracket. So overlapping the top bracket onto the bottom, we can install our button head bolts, the flat washers, and the nylon lock nut. What we can do now is just snug these up. I'm going to use a 10mm deep socket as well as the provided Allen key that we used before, but we are not going to completely tighten them down because this will be adjustable to the diameter of your tire. What we can do next is install our license plate bracket. This is going to be secured with the button head bolts with the captured lock washer and flat washer, and we can tighten these up with the same provided Allen key. Next, we can install our tire mount. Next, we can install the first bracket of our tire mount. This is going to use the 18mm bolts, flat washers, and 19mm nylon lock nut. And we can tighten those up with a 19mm wrench and an 18mm socket. So first, before we plug this in, what we're gonna do is take our extension harness and run this through. You can either run this through a mounting location or you could run it through the side. I personally like to run it through the carrier. It is just a little bit cleaner and you won't have to worry about pinching the wire when we put on the second mount. So once that's through, so we can attach it on the other side. And we can actually work this through. So next we can install the second part of our mount, making sure that we're feeding our wiring harness through. Now how far this is set out from the actual tire carrier itself will depend on the back spacing of your wheel. I am just going to set it right there for right now. We can adjust it in a little bit. Then we can take the two 18mm bolts, the same size that were used on the first part of our mount. Put those through with the two flat washers. And we can secure those down with the other flat washers and nylon lock nut. Before we go ahead and tighten anything down, I do want to measure our wheel and tire, make sure all of our brackets are set at the right height and length. So for our main mount, we want to measure from the face of the mounting surface to the edge of the tire, and it looks like we are about at 6.5 inches. And then for the third brake light, we can really measure from wherever we need to. I'm just going to measure from the first mounting location for our wheel stud, and it looks like it's about at 14.5. So I'm gonna put it at about 16 inches just to make sure that it's sitting above the tire. And then you can measure from the tire carrier to the mounting location. And I'm gonna put it about a 1/2 inch out from 6.5 inches, so we're at about 7. Now we can tighten everything down. So now we can tighten on the two bolts on our main mount with a 19mm wrench and 18mm socket. And we will have a set bolt that goes up at the top or bottom, depending on which way you mounted this. I'm going to tighten that down with an 18mm socket. And that's just going to hold that main mount portion in place. Then we can tighten down our third brake light bracket where we need to with the 10mm ratcheting wrench. Then we can fully tighten down the third brake light bracket bolts using that provided Allen key and a 10mm deep socket. Now we can plug in our third brake light wiring harness and close this up. Next up, we can install our heim joint. We're going to take our provided bolts, our flat washers, and our nylon lock nut. So now we can tighten this side down with a 19mm wrench and 18mm socket. Then we can connect the other side. So in order to adjust the heim joint, you can turn the turnbuckle in the middle, and there are 2 jam nuts to lock it into place. We want to make sure that the tire carrier is up against our tailgate, that the bump stop is going to make sure that it's not going to rattle. Once that is lined up, before we tighten it down, the 2 jam nuts down, we can install our bolt. We can tighten that up with a 19mm wrench and 18mm socket. And then before we go ahead and tighten the 2 jam nuts down, we want to make sure that the tailgate is operating correctly. Once that's adjusted and it's not rattling, what we can do is tighten the jam nuts down with a 17mm wrench. While we're here, we're going to put our wiring harness through our tailgate. Push our grommet back in. Right, and then we can mount up our camera. Now we can mount up our backup camera in the mount. Now you are going to be provided with hardware for this. It is very small, but we're going to take that bolt and flat washer, flip it upside down. We also have another flat washer and lock washer, and then you will have a nut provided in the kit. So once you have it lined up, you can take a Phillips head screwdriver and start to secure it down. And we can do the same with the other two. Next, we can take our camera mount, feed the wire through, mount it up onto the studs, and plug it in. Plug it into the back of our camera. After that's on, we can grab the cover for our camera, slide that over top, and then now we can wire up our license plate lights. What we can do now is mount up our license plate light. We're going to take the flat washer and the 10mm nut off the back of our license plate bolt. It is pre-installed when you take these out of the box. Then we can feed the license plate light bolt through the bottom hole of our license plate. We can feed the wire through our bracket. We can feed the hardware on, flat washer, and then the nut. And then secure it down. And we can do the same thing for the other side. Once your hardware is in place and you made sure that the LED light is facing up to illuminate the license plate, we can tighten those down with a 10mm wrench. What we can do now is connect both of the positive and both of the negative wires together. I already have a clip plugged into our factory wiring harness where it accepts a spade connector, so I am going to add spade connectors to both the negative and positive leads here. Now you can wire this up however you want. If you want to directly wire it into the wiring harness, you can do that. I find it a little bit easier to add a connector onto the factory harness. Now, if you are going to use spade connectors, I would recommend to heat shrink these, and then we can run these wires over to the driver's side so we can plug them into our wiring harness. Now we can plug our spade connectors into our clip here, making sure that black goes to the black connector. And that the red goes to the positive wire. You're only going to have two. So this one is the white wire with the blue trace. It may depend on your model. So once that's plugged in, we can mount up our tire. Last but not least, we can mount up our tire. So that's gonna wrap it up for my review and install. Make sure you like and subscribe, and for more videos and products like this, always keep it right here at ExtremeTerrain.com.